I find out my fiance has a nasty secret right before our wedding. What shall I do? I have to get this off my chest. And frankly, I could use some advice. Here goes nothing. I'm Bethany, 30 years old, and until recently, I thought I had it all figured out. I am the CEO of my own technology startup. Yeah, I know, the girl boss cliché, but bear with me, And I got engaged to the man of my dreams. Let me take you on the roller coaster ride of my life over the last year and a half. It all began when my friend Harry set me up on a blind date. I was reluctant at first. Who has time to date when they're trying to change the world? One application at a time, correct? But Harry persisted. Come on, Beth. He said you couldn't marry your laptop. I was sitting in this swanky restaurant, nervously checking my phone every 2 seconds, when James walked in. And let me tell you, the man was straight out of a romantic comedy. Tall, dark, and handsome, with a smile that can melt ice. Our first date turned into 2, then 3. Before I knew it, we were that couple. James was everything I never thought I wanted. He was a charming and successful investment banker because, of course, and he seemed interested in my work. Do you know how rare it is to find a guy who doesn't glaze over when you mention algorithms? Fast forward 18 months, and we're planning our dream Hawaiian wedding. I even caved and let his mother talk us out of the pineapple coconut wedding cake. Everything was perfect, too. We had our bachelor and bachelorette parties the week before the wedding, which turned out to be ideal. Mine was pretty mild. Face masks, rom-coms, and far too much wine with my girlfriends. I remember feeling overjoyed and in love with my friend Nikki. Remember the name? It's important. Later, he had just finished assisting me into my pajamas after I'd consumed 1 too many glasses of rosé. That's when it occurred. At 3 a.m., my phone vibrated with a new video message. In my wine-induced haze, I nearly ignored it. God, I wish I did. The video was dark and shaky, clearly shot in a club, but the central figure was easily identifiable. James, my James, with his arm wrapped around Harry's shoulders. They were both clearly intoxicated, shouting to be heard above the music. And then James began talking. He was bragging on Reddit about his sexual conquests. I'm discussing threesomes, one-night stands, you name it. Each word felt like a dagger to my heart. However, that wasn't the worst part. He mentioned Nikki, the sweet, supportive Nikki who was currently passed out on the couch beside me. James had slept with her several times, and the way he talked about it made it seem like a distant memory. The room was spinning, and it wasn't just the wine. The man I believed I knew. I had meticulously planned my future. Everything was crumbling in front of my eyes. I must have made a noise because another friend, Nadine, awoke. She took one look at my face and was at my side in an instant. I couldn't speak or breathe. I just gave her my phone. The damning video is still playing. In a matter of seconds, Nadine's expression changed from confused to furious. She hugged me tightly, whispering that everything would be fine. But how could it be in a 3-minute video? My entire world had collapsed with shaking hands. I did the only thing I could think of. I blocked James on my phone, social media, and everywhere. It was a small, probably futile act, but it seemed like the only thing I could control at the time. As the sun rose and my friends began to stir, I realized the full extent of what had happened. In only a few days, I was supposed to walk down the aisle, pledging my life to a man I barely knew. I curled into myself, physically, trying to keep my shattered heart together. The countdown to my wedding day, which had once filled me with joy and anticipation, now loomed like a prison sentence. Nadine took command, her voice a hushed blend of comfort and outrage. She was on the phone, I believe, canceling appointments and notifying the wedding planner. I should have done that, but I could not move. I could not believe I moved through the world like a ghost. I quote, not eating or sleeping much. My phone was constantly buzzing with messages from James, each one unread. The wedding planner called repeatedly, her cheerful voice a stark contrast to the despair I felt. On the 3rd day, James finally returned home. I heard his key in the lock and briefly considered fleeing, hiding in my bedroom. But something kept me on the spot. A perverse desire to confront the man who had destroyed my world. He looked awful. His usually immaculate appearance was disheveled, with dark circles under his bloodshot eyes, indicating that he had slept as little as I had. For a brief moment, I felt sympathetic, but it was quickly replaced by a tidal wave of hurt and anger that followed Beth. He inhaled, his voice hoarse. Thank God, I have been so worried. Please let me explain the video. It's not as you think. I said nothing, my silence. There's a wall between us. My hands clenched into fists, the nails digging into my palms. He took a step forward, and I instinctively moved back. Baby, please, he pleaded. I had been drinking. These guys bring out the worst in me. I was just bragging, trying to be the man you truly are. I cut him off, my voice full of venom, because the James I thought I knew would never do this. But maybe I didn't know you at all. That is not true. He insisted on taking another step towards me. I retreated further, my back against the wall. The man you know is the one who loves you. That is the real me. Don't dare, I hissed. Do not bring up the subject of love. You don't lie to your loved ones. You do not humiliate them. You do not invite your ex-lovers to their wedding. James's face crumpled. Nikki and I met before I met you. It was not serious. Oh, that makes things better, doesn't it? My sarcasm was sharp enough to cut glass. It, quote, "okay to lie about sleeping with my friend because it was not serious." Tell me, James, was anything ever serious to you, or was it all a game? He insisted it wasn't like that. Desperation colored his tone. You've changed me. Beth made me feel better. Please, give me another chance. I will do anything. I'll show you that I can be the man you deserve. Looking into his tear-filled eyes, I felt a glimmer of the love we once shared, but it was quickly snuffed out by the tidal wave of betrayal and hurt that followed. I need you to leave, I said, my voice steady despite the emotional storm raging within me. I can't look at you right now without feeling sick and wondering what else you've lied about. Beth, please get out. The words ripped from my throat in a raw scream. Get out! Get out! James stumbled backwards, shock written all over his face at the door. He paused, looking back with regret and hope. I will not give up on us, Beth. I will wait. I will do whatever it takes. As the door closed behind him, my legs gave way, and I slid down the wall to the ground. The apartment felt vast and empty, resonating with the ghosts of our shattered future. Sobs racked my body with equal parts grief and rage. I reached for my phone and dialed the only number I knew by heart. Mom, I said when she responded, my voice cracking. I need you. That is where I will leave. Part 1. Reddit. It's been cathartic to write everything out, but I'm emotionally exhausted. I'll post Part 2 tomorrow, where I'll go over the aftermath, the healing process, and where things are now. Thank you for listening. And if anyone has been through something similar, I'd really appreciate some advice on how to proceed. Edit. Wow. I did not expect this to go so far. Thank you all for your encouraging comments. I'm reading them and will try to respond as soon as I can. Part 2 will be available soon, I promise. Comments, supportive, all 23. Oh, honey, I am sorry you are going through this. You're incredibly brave for sharing your story. I'm sending you virtual hugs, broken-hearted bride. Thank you very much. It means a lot to know that these virtual hugs are greatly appreciated right now. Relationship X11. As someone who has been cheated on, I understand your pain. It will get better, I promise. Take one day at a time. Don't be afraid to rely on your support system. Broken-hearted bride, thank you for your encouragement. It's comforting to know that things will get better. I'm definitely leaning heavily on my support system right now. And Reddit user 42. Why bother posting Part 2? It's obvious what you should do. Drop his cheating ass and move on. A cheater who has cheated before will continue to cheat. Broken-hearted bride. I appreciate your viewpoint, but it is not always so straightforward. Relationships are complicated, and healing is not a simple process. I'm hoping Part 2 will provide more context. Update 1. I'm back with Part 2 of my story. If you haven't read Part 1, you might want to start there. This is going to be a long one. So, where were we? Oh, right. I just kicked James out and called my mother. Let me tell you, I've never been more grateful for my mother's no-nonsense attitude. She arrived at my door with comfort food and a determined look in her eye. As soon as I saw her, the dam burst. I sobbed into her shoulder, spilling out the entire sordid tale. She held me, stroked my hair, and allowed me to cry it out. Then, in typical mom fashion, she said, Okay, that's enough wallowing. It's time to start picking up the pieces. There are a lot of pieces to pick up. First order of business, canceling the wedding. There quotes nothing quite like sending an email to 200 people explaining why your happily ever after has gone up in flames. The reactions ranged from sympathetic to awkwardly questioning whether they could still use their Hawaii tickets. Pro tip, don't ask that when someone's world is imploding. Then came the task of confronting my friends. Nadine was the first to arrive, and I swear I could see steam coming from her ears. I could kill him, she muttered, pacing in my living room. How could he have done this to you? Just say the word, Beth, and I will make him disappear. I know people. I'm pretty sure she was joking about the last part. But the most difficult confrontation was with Nikki. She arrived at my door unannounced, tears streaming down her cheeks. I'm so sorry, Beth, she choked. I should have told you that I was afraid. I did not want to lose your friendship. It was a long time ago before you met James. I never imagined. I looked at her. I had no feelings for this woman, whom I considered a friend. No rage, no betrayal. It was just a vast emptiness. I think you should leave, I replied quietly, shutting the door on her protests. Maybe this makes me a bad person. But in that moment, I couldn't bear her pain on top of my own. I went into work with a vengeance. My workplace became my sanctuary, a place where I could lose myself in spreadsheets and marketing strategies, and the constant ache in my chest would be temporarily forgotten. But those nights were the worst. In the quiet darkness of my bedroom, doubts crept in. Have I overreacted? Should I have offered James another chance? The what-ifs tormented me, depriving me of sleep and peace. It was Harry who finally persuaded me to seek professional assistance. You're not yourself, Beth, he said over lunch one day. His eyes widened with worry. Perhaps talking to someone will help. I bristled at first, my pride overflowing with the realization that he was correct. But eventually, I found myself in a therapist's office, attempting to unpack the tangled mess of emotions I'd been carrying. Dr. Amelia Tran became my steadfast anchor in the storm. She listened without judgment as I expressed my fears, anger, and lingering feelings for James. It's okay to continue caring for him, she said gently. Feelings don't have an on-off switch. What matters is how we choose to act on our feelings. I started to rebuild. I rediscovered old hobbies and lost myself in books and art. I reconnected with friends I had neglected during my whirlwind romance, and gradually I began to remember who I was before James, before I had tied my identity so tightly to being someone's fiance. But here's the thing, Reddit. It was not easy. There were days when the pain felt as fresh as the first morning, and the desire to call James and beg him to make everything better was almost overwhelming. James was making it difficult to move on. The man persisted. I will give him that. Text messages and phone calls were ignored, but they left a small crack in my resolve. Then came the emails. Long, rambling apologies and promises of change. To be better, to become the man he believed I deserved. I read each one, my heart aching, before storing them in a folder I couldn't bear to delete. As weeks turned into months, his approach changed. Flowers started appearing in my office, each accompanied by a handwritten note. I am still here. They all used different words. I am still waiting. My assistant Maria would purse her lips disapprovingly every time a new arrangement arrived, silently asking if she should return them. I always shook my head, letting the small connection remain. One day, I arrived at my favorite coffee shop to find that my usual order had already been paid for. The barista handed me a note along with my latte. I remember your order. I hope your day is as sweet as you like your coffee. It was such a James thing to do, at once thoughtful and grand. Despite the pain in my chest, I managed to smile. He began showing up at charity events that he knew I would attend. Always keeping a respectful distance while making sure I saw him. Our gazes would meet across crowded rooms, and for a brief moment, I felt the familiar pull, the previously unbreakable connection. But then, reality set in, and I'd turn away, the wounds still too raw. On what would have been our first anniversary, a small package arrived in my apartment. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet engraved with the coordinates of the location where he proposed. The note reads, I'm currently at these coordinates, thinking of you and the future. We still could have. If you are ready to speak, I will be here until sunset. It took every ounce of willpower not to approach him, but I knew I wasn't prepared. Not yet. I discussed James's actions with Dr. Tran during our sessions. He's showing remorse, she noted. But the question is whether his actions are motivated by your healing or his own guilt. Most importantly, how do they make you feel? My friends were divided on this issue. Harry felt I should give him another chance. Seeing his efforts as genuine, people can change. He would insist on our weekly wine night. Nadine, on the other hand, was firmly in the cheater, always a cheater camp and urged me to move on. But I knew I had to make the decision on my own. I stood on my apartment's balcony one evening. The city lights twinkle below. I realized I had been so preoccupied with James's journey, his remorse, his attempts to change, that I had overlooked my own. Yes, comma. James attempted to make amends, but was I willing to accept them? Had I recovered enough to consider welcoming him back into my life? The answers did not come easily, but I knew I needed to confront these questions head-on. My future, with or without James, depended on this. As I watched the sun set over the city skyline, I made a choice. It was time to stop reacting to James's gestures and instead actively shape my own path forward. I called James the next day and requested to meet. We settled on a quiet park, neutral ground with no memories for either of us. As I approached our meeting spot, I noticed him sitting on a bench, looking just as nervous as I was. Our eyes met, and for a brief moment, I was transported back to our first date, which was filled with the same mix of anticipation and uncertainty. "Beth," he said softly as I sat down, keeping a respectful distance between us. "Thank you for coming." We talked for hours, in a way we had never done before. James revealed his insecurities, the reasons for his previous behavior, and the work he'd done on himself. Over the last few months, I've shared my pain, anger, and journey of self-discovery. "I understand if it's too late," James finally said, his voice full of emotion. "But I want you to know that I love you and will always apologize for hurting you." I took a deep breath and felt the weight of the moment. "James, I admit that a part of me still loves you. But love is not always enough. Trust, once broken, is difficult to rebuild." He nodded with understanding in his eyes. "I know, and I'm willing to do the work if you let me." As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the park, I realized that this conversation had neither ended nor begun. It was a checkpoint in our ongoing journeys, separate but still connected. I quote, "Not ready to jump back into a relationship," I finally admitted. "But I'm open to the idea of starting over slowly with friends." The smile on James's face was a combination of relief and hope. "I like it," he said softly. In the weeks and months that followed, James and I started the slow process of rebuilding. We met for coffee, exchanged texts, and eventually relearned how to be in each other's lives. There were awkward moments, and old hurts resurfaced, but we dealt with them honestly and patiently. Throughout it all, I kept my focus on personal development. My company continued to grow, and I even began mentoring young female entrepreneurs, finding fulfillment in assisting others in achieving their goals. I continued my therapy sessions with Dr. Tran, addressing my lingering trust issues and learning to set healthy boundaries. James and me. Only time will tell where our journey will lead. There are no guarantees or fairy tale endings promised. But I'm no longer the same woman who once expected a flawless wedding and a picture-perfect life. Standing on my balcony last night, watching the city I love come alive with lights, I felt a sense of calm wash over me. The future remains uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, I'm not afraid of it. I'm ready for whatever happens next. I'm confident in my ability to handle it. My phone vibrated with a text from James. "Coffee tomorrow." I smiled and typed back a simple yes. So that is where I am currently. Reddit, still figuring things out and healing, but moving forward. I am not sure if James and I will end up together in the long run, but I am confident that whatever happens, I will be fine. Thank you all for hearing my story. It's been therapeutic to write it all down, and your support means more than you realize. If any of you have experienced something similar, I would love to hear your stories and any advice you may have. I will try to answer questions in the comments. Thanks again, Reddit. You've been a lifeline during one of the most difficult times in my life. Edit. Wow, I am overwhelmed by the response. Thank you for your kind words, advice, and even tough love for those who asked. Yes, comma. I eventually heard Nikki out. That's a whole other story. If you're interested, I could share it with you someday. Edit 2. For those who have asked about my company, we are doing well. This entire experience inspired me to create a new app aimed at mental health and personal development. If you're interested, I may do an AMA on being a female tech CEO someday. Edit 3. To the person who asked if I was willing to date other people, I am currently focused on myself, but I am not closing any doors. Who knows what the future holds? Comments? Hopeless Romantic 22, this is like a movie. I'm rooting for you and James to work things out. Everyone deserves a second chance, correct? Broken-hearted bride. Thank you for your support, but it's not as easy as it appears in the movies. We quote, retaking things slowly and seeing where they lead. Second, chances are more complicated in real life. Sister 87 is cynical. Girl, you are too good for him. He revealed who he truly is, believe him. There are many fish in the sea who will not lie or cheat. Broken-hearted bride. I value your perspective. Trust me, I have had the same thoughts. However, people can change if they truly want to. Let's see if James is one of them. Curious Cat, 99. What about Nikki? Have you forgiven her? I need more broken-hearted brides. The Nikki situation. It's complicated. We've talked, and I now have a better understanding of her point of view, but rebuilding that friendship is an ongoing process. Maybe I'll tell you more about it another time. Startup Guru 42. As a fellow entrepreneur, I'm impressed you were able to keep your company going through all of this. Any advice on how to balance personal crises with professional responsibilities? Broken-hearted bride? Great question. It was definitely not easy. My advice is to rely on your team, be open and honest about your situation, and don't be afraid to delegate tasks. Having a consistent routine and devoting yourself to work can also be therapeutic. Just make sure you don't use it to avoid confronting your emotions. Skeptical. Sam, this all seems too convenient. Are you sure James didn't send that video as a weird test? Or perhaps one of your friends is attempting to undermine your relationship? Broken-hearted bride. I can assure you that all of this is unfortunately very real. I know it sounds like something out of a drama, but the truth can be stranger than fiction. I wondered about the video's motivations as well, but in the end, James confirmed its authenticity. No complicated tasks or sabotage. It's just a messy, painful situation. Update 2. I somehow assumed there would be no update since the last one. But believe me, a lot has happened. So I feel compelled to show you the rest of the picture because you've been here since the beginning. Before I begin, I'd like to thank everyone for your support in my previous posts. Your kind words and advice have been a lifeline during this crazy time. So, remember how I mentioned James's persistent attempts to win me back while things took an interesting turn? Around a month ago, I finally agreed to meet him for coffee. I know, many of you warned me against it, but I felt the need for closure. We met at a cute little cafe downtown. James looked good. Damn good. Actually, he'd clearly been hitting the gym, and he exuded a quiet confidence that contrasted with his usual cocky demeanor. I felt that familiar flutter in my chest. James seemed genuinely sorry. He told me about the therapy he had been receiving at the steps. He aimed to be a better person. He even took out his journal, where he had been recording his progress. I was impressed. I'll admit it, Beth, he said, taking my hand. Yes, I let him. I know I made a lot of mistakes, but the last few months without you have taught me what is truly important in life. I love you, and I want to spend the rest of my life making up for my mistakes. Will you give me another chance? Read it. I'm embarrassed to admit it, but I felt tempted. I'm really tempted. He looked at me with sincerity in his voice. It felt like falling in love all over again. But then, as if the universe intervened, my phone buzzed. The email came from an unknown address. The subject line read, "Proof James is lying open immediately." I almost ignored it, but something compelled me to open the email, and boy, am I glad I did. Attached were screenshots of text conversations and emails, including recent ones between James and wait for it. Nikki. Yes, that's it. Nikki. My hands shook as I scrolled through the messages. Everything was there. Plans to meet, intimate conversations, and even talks about their future together. The most recent message was sent just 2 days ago. I looked up at James, who was watching me with a puzzled expression. Beth? What is wrong? You turned pale without saying anything. I turned my phone around to show him the screen. His face lost its color. I can explain, he stammered, but I'm done with explanations. I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. How long? I inquired, my voice unusually calm. Beth, please. It's not as you think. How long? James? I was shouting now, unconcerned about the startled looks from the other cafe customers. He deflated, appearing smaller than I'd ever seen him. He whispered, "It never stopped." All of his grand gestures and promises of change had been a lie, and he had given an Oscar-worthy performance. I grabbed my bag and went to the door. James scrambled after me, pleading, "Beth, please wait. I can explain everything." I whirled around, fury emanating from every pore. "James, explain how you've been playing me for a fool. How have you been sleeping with my friend the entire time? Save it. We are done for good this time." I could hear him calling after me, but I didn't turn back. I had had enough of being the story's fool. After I returned home and had a good cry, I decided to respond. I needed to know who sent it and how they obtained the information. The response I received took the wind out of me all over again. It came from James, his wife. Yeah, you read that correctly. Wife. It turns out our dear James has been living a double life the entire time. He and Elena have been married for 5 years. They also have a 2-year-old son together. He was always busy with work because he was splitting his time between 2 families. Elena discovered James's infidelity several months ago. She had been gathering evidence since she planned her escape. When she realized James was attempting to win me back, she decided to warn me. We met up the following day. Elena and I were 2 women who should have hated each other, but we bonded over coffee and shared pain. Elena is incredible, by the way. Brilliant, kind, and far too good for James. She revealed all of the details James had kept hidden, including the separate apartment he kept for his bachelor life and the elaborate web of lies he'd spun to keep us all in the dark. But Elena had already put her plan in motion. She had hired a ruthless divorce lawyer and was ready to take James for all he was worth. And given the evidence she's gathered, James's future appears bleak. You might be wondering about Nikki and all this. While Elena's email blast did not just reach me, Nikki received her own set of revelations. Last I heard, she had also fled the city. It was humiliating to confront anyone. Elena and I have stayed in touch. We're not exactly friends. Our situation is too unusual for that. But we are allies. We're helping each other heal, sharing information, and occasionally having cathartic James bashing sessions. James, for his part, has been blowing up my phone, voicemails, texts, and emails, begging for an opportunity to explain and make things right. His most recent message was simply a string of "I'm sorry's" repeated several hundred times. So that is where things stand right now. James's life is imploding. Elena is about to take him to the cleaners, while I am rebuilding my life one day at a time. Oh, and do you remember the trip to Hawaii? The one that was meant to be my honeymoon? I'm still going, but I'll be traveling alone this time. A chance to unwind, reflect, and begin this new chapter in my life. Thank you for listening. Read it. Your support has meant everything to me. If I've learned anything from this, it's that life can surprise you in both bad and good ways. Here's to new beginnings and wonderful surprises to come. Edit 1. Many of you have inquired about James's legal situation. I spoke with Elena, and she agreed to let me share more information. I will provide an update in the comments. Edit 2 for the Reddit sleuths attempting to figure out James's true identity. Please stop. I understand you mean well, but this is not a witch hunt. Let quote leave the legal issues to professionals, okay? Comments. Broken-hearted bride. Hello, everyone. As promised, here's some more information about James's legal situation. With Elena's permission, 1. Elena's lawyer has filed for divorce on the basis of adultery and fraud. They have solid evidence, including financial records demonstrating how James supported his double life. 2. James is facing potential criminal charges for fraud. He allegedly used company funds to fund some of his adventures. His firm is conducting an internal investigation. Elena is seeking full custody of their son. Given the evidence of James's double life and unstable behavior, her lawyer is confident, citing the possibility of a civil lawsuit from James's firm. If this goes through, he may have to pay back a significant amount of money. 5. As for me, I'm avoiding the legal battle as much as possible. I gave Elena's lawyer a statement, but that is all. My intention is to heal and move forward. Elena is doing well, all things considered. She's a strong woman with a great support system. All of this has actually brought us closer together. It's funny how life works sometimes. I hope this has satisfied some of your curiosity. Please keep in mind that this is an ongoing legal matter. There's a lot I can't say. Thank you for understanding. Lego Legal 42 lawyer here. James is in deep trouble. Based on what you have shared, he's considering charges for fraud, embezzlement, and possibly even bigamy. Depending on your local laws, he'll need a miracle and an excellent lawyer to avoid serving time. Suspicious might 156. I can't believe Nikki was involved the entire time. Have you heard anything else from her heartbroken bride? Last I heard, Nikki Mia, a mutual friend, was staying with family out of state. Honestly, I'm relieved she's gone. I'm not sure I could handle seeing her right now. Concerned friend number 1. I quote Mia, I'm worried about you up there. Are you sure it's safe to share all of this online? What happens if James sees it? Broken-hearted bride, I appreciate your concern, but I've been careful not to reveal any identifying information. Plus, I doubt James is currently browsing Reddit. He has bigger issues to deal with. Phoenix Rising 2021. You are so strong for getting through this, but please confirm that you have changed all of your locks and passwords. Men, like James, do not give up easily on their broken-hearted bride. Don't worry, I've taken all the necessary precautions, including new locks, passwords, and a new security system for my apartment. Safety comes first. Cynical Optimist 87. I hate to be that person, but are you certain Elena is telling the truth? This all seems a little convenient. What if she's just trying to defraud you both, broken-hearted bride? I understand your point of view, but believe me when I say Elena's story is credible. I've seen the evidence firsthand. Birth certificate for their child, marriage license, and photos dating back years. Unless Elena is a time-traveling master forger, it's genuine.